Long before the colonial powers etched artificial lines across the African continent, there stood mighty kingdoms whose legacies stretched far beyond the limits of parchment and time. One of these was the Kanem-Bornu Empire, a vast and powerful Islamic kingdom in what is now northeastern Nigeria, Chad, and parts of Cameroon. And among its many rulers, Idris Alooma emerged as a titan king whose reforms, military brilliance, and moral authority reshaped not just his empire, but the historical identity of the Sahel. Born in the 16th century, King Idris Alooma inherited more than a throne. He inherited an empire under pressure. The Kanem-Bornu Empire had already seen centuries of glory, tracing its roots as far back as the 9th century under the Sahel dynasty. But by the time Alooma came to power, it was struggling. External threats, internal divisions, and decaying institutions had weakened the kingdom's foundations. Idris would not only stop the rot, he would rebuild the very soul of the empire. What set Alooma apart was his dual mastery of the sword and the scroll. He was a fierce warrior, trained in the art of battle and fearless on the front lines. Yet he was also deeply devout, a Muslim scholar and reformer who saw leadership not only as a political duty, but as a sacred trust. In his vision, statecraft and spirituality were not separate pursuits, they were one and the same. From the moment he ascended the throne around 1571, Idris launched an ambitious campaign of military expansion and administrative reform. He understood that survival meant strength, and strength meant modernization. Under his rule, the Kanem-Bornu military was transformed from a fragmented force into a professional and highly disciplined army. He introduced firearms, a rarity in that region at the time, through trade with the Ottoman Empire and North African merchants, giving his soldiers a tactical edge over rival states. His military expeditions were sweeping and strategic. Idris Alooma conquered rebellious provinces, crushed bandit warlords, and extended Kanem-Bornu's influence deeper into the Lake Chad basin. His army secured key trade routes, ensuring that Kanem-Bornu remained the beating heart of trans-Saharan commerce. Salt, cola nuts, gold, and slaves flowed through his empire, bringing both wealth and prestige. But Alooma wasn't merely a conqueror, he was a builder of systems. Recognizing that empires are only as strong as their infrastructure, he invested heavily in roads, canals, and fortifications. These weren't just physical upgrades, they were arteries of power, facilitating both the movement of troops and the integration of distant territories. One of his most impressive feats was the establishment of guest houses and rest stops along trade routes, sprawling hotels designed for traveling merchants, pilgrims, and scholars. This act of hospitality underscored his reputation as a pious and just ruler. But perhaps King Idris Alooma's most lasting contributions were his reforms in law, religion, and governance. A devout Muslim, he made Islamic law Sharia a central pillar of state policy. He built mosques, funded Islamic schools, and brought in scholars from Egypt and North Africa to teach and advise. He established Qadi courts, Islamic legal tribunals, to ensure that justice was dispensed fairly across his territories. In doing so, he not only unified his multi-ethnic empire under a shared moral code, but elevated its standing in the broader Muslim world. Yet Idris Alooma was not a blind theocrat. He understood that religion alone could not sustain an empire, so he blended Islamic jurisprudence with traditional African governance structures, ensuring that his reforms were both authentic and pragmatic. Local chieftains retained their influence, but were now accountable to a centralized authority that promoted merit and accountability. Corruption was punished, justice was expected, order was restored. Diplomatically, he maintained strong ties with the Ottoman Empire and other Islamic powers, securing military equipment and scholarly exchanges. These relationships positioned Kanem-Bornu not as a regional player, but as an international power within the Islamic world. Alooma even sent envoys on the Hajj to Mecca, forging bonds of religious brotherhood that transcended geography. And while his military and administrative achievements were formidable, it was his moral leadership that left the deepest imprint on the people of Bornu. He was known to travel incognito, to inspect the conditions of his subjects, often arriving unannounced to ensure his officials were fulfilling their duties. He punished tax collectors who abused their power and compensated victims of injustice. From the royal treasury, in an era where kings ruled from gilded thrones, Idris Alooma walked the dusty roads of his empire to hear the cries of the poor. As a reformer, he also introduced a rigorous system of record-keeping and taxation, providing the financial backbone for his ambitious statecraft. He insisted on monthly reports from his governors and reorganized the bureaucracy to reduce waste and increase efficiency. Every aspect of his governance bore the mark of a ruler obsessed with order and excellence, but no reign is without its challenges. Idris Alooma faced resistance from within, particularly from factions resistant to Islamic reform or those who feared the centralization of power. Yet he navigated these waters with tact and authority, using both diplomacy and force when necessary. He was not just feared, he was respected. By the time of his death around 1603, Idris Alooma had ruled for over 3 decades and left behind an empire transformed. He had not only arrested the decline of Kanem-Bornu, he had propelled it into a golden age. Under his leadership, it became a beacon of Islamic governance, military might, and cultural vitality in West Africa. His legacy endured for centuries, passed down through oral traditions and historical chronicles alike. To this day, the people of Borno and beyond remember Idris Alooma, not merely as a king, but as a statesman, reformer, scholar, and warrior. His life challenges the narrow lens through which African history is often viewed. He was not a passive figure swept up by the tides of fate. He was a master of his own destiny and of the empire he led. In an age where leadership is too often measured by conquest alone, Idris Alooma reminds us that true greatness lies in vision, integrity, and the relentless pursuit of justice.